Hello there, Erin here. It's the third Friday of the month, and for those of you that have been following along, you know that means we are working our way through this set of sketches in the Stampin' Up! Annual Catalog. This is page 28, and this is the sketch we're working on today. Let me grab it. I have it a larger image. It's easier to see. Okay, I took a picture of that and enlarged it so you can see we have two photos in the center. Those are probably 4x6. We've got some paper strips at the top and bottom. I would interpret this as a title, and then you've got your journaling, and then the circle represents an embellishment cluster here and on the opposite corner there. So I think this is a great starting point, but I am turning this into a double page layout. So let's go ahead and jump in. This is the Keeping Traditions collection from Stampin' Up! And this is what the sticker sheet looks like. I did get the scrapbooking workshop, so there's bonus papers in here and a bunch of punch outs. So this looks like a big jumble, chaotic mess. I've already popped a lot of these out and actually assembled one of the layouts already. I'll bring that in here later in the video. But the sticker sheet, so I ended up getting an extra because I'm doing this or using this for my December daily. But I went ahead and cut up the other sticker sheets. So I've got lots of pieces here. And then I have the instructions. But again, we're using that sketch. So I am going to do my own thing, but use the bits and pieces in this collection. So I am keeping true to this design, and I have two photos here. We're going to work on the left-hand side of the page, and then I will create the right-hand side. So there's going to be more photos, but these are the two I printed for the left hand. So I want to show you something here, and I think this is just a little bonus tip. And I was inspired to share this because we were having a conversation in our creative design team community about how to get perfect white borders, because many of you who are printing at home, you struggle getting these perfect white borders. So I thought I'd share this tip, and I did reach out. Now there's all sorts of different apps out there that you can use to print your own photos. I use an app called Print to Size. It's iPhone compatible only, and I have a whole video on that. I'll leave that listed in the description box below. But what would often happen if you are attempting to build or print a 4x6 photo, it would be there'd be no border on the bottom, even though on the screen it looks like there's a border. So it's like, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? And I reached out to the creator of the app, and they were really nice and they answered my questions, and they said that they were frustrated with it as well. And it has to do with what they call borderless expansion. And it's really on the end of the printer. So all printers are different, and they are, making these calculations and adjustments, and you can't get precise communication. So that's why the borders may be off from what you're actually seeing on the screen of your phone or computer to what gets printed. So here's what I do. I only ever have trouble on the bottom of if I were printing a true 4x6, I'd get these perfect white borders on the side, top, and the right side, but the bottom would be off. So what I do is I make it just a little bit shorter. I rarely print 4x6 photos. The only time I do a true 4x6 is if I am using a 4x6 flip flap. Otherwise, I print them smaller for lots of reasons. I've shared those tips here on my channel before about being able to split a piece of paper in half, and then you get 6-inch pieces. And if your photo is a little smaller, it fits within that. So that's one of the main reasons. But it also comes in handy for these white borders. I think I need to trim off just a little bit more. So what I like to do, and actually I'm going to show you the photo on the actual screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, I just switched over to filming with my iPad so I can show you my phone screen. So I'm within my Print to Size app, and I have my photo here on the canvas, and you can see now if I were to drag this down and make it look like a true, I'm not going to print this because that would waste a ton of ink, but basically this would probably print and there'd be no white border, or just a tiny sliver of a white border. It looks even on the screen, fairly even, but it wouldn't be in real life. So you saw how I had it there. And what my measurements are 3.7 wide by 5.3. You could even go, if you want a true 4x6, you could go a little bit more. but just give yourself that room. It's kind of a guessing game, and I hate to say that because it may not work out. And in the times it doesn't work out, what I do is just mat it on some cardstock. But like I said, when I don't, I rarely print with a 4x6. So all I have to do is trim off the bottom and it works out beautifully. But I always size them. So if I wanted a 4x4 square with a white border, it would be 3.7 by 3.7. And that would give me enough of that border, which would be a true 4x4. So again, I'm not going for a 4x6 here. I want mine, what I have done here, let me just get back to where I was. So 3.7 wide and then 5.3, you can see that on the screen. And again, that's what that results in. So you can see that that looks pretty true to what we have. And then I just trim off trim off the bottom there. But again, if you want a true 4x6, I would probably try around a 3.7 with the white border. If you want, let me rephrase that. If you want a 4x6 with the white border, try 3.7 wide. And I've just kind of eyeballed the white border there. And then on the bottom, I'd probably go about 5.55. And then what you can do is if you get one where it looks really great and it's communicating with your printer, you can keep that photo on the backdrop and then add another one on top of it. So look, I've been mushroom hunting there. But let's say you want to bring in another photo. Let's drop in this picture of my Christmas tree. It's only going to print what is on top. So I can easily fill this footprint, and then I know if that other one fit perfectly or printed perfectly with white borders that I'm happy with, I can leave that on the back and just keep dropping photos on top of it. And that will tell me, it's almost like a place card holder, right? And I know where my borders are going to align. So it's not perfect every time. And again, it has to do with that borderless expansion and the communication between the phone or your computer and the printer, because we're communicating wireless, and then the printer's trying to adjust for that. Printers will lose quality around the edge too, so that has something to do with it. They're trying to make it as perfect as possible. So anyway, I know that's a common question, and I hope that this was helpful for those of you that are struggling with perfect white borders. I still really love the Printicize app because it's only a few dollars. It's a one-time purchase, while many photo printing apps are a monthly reoccurring fee. So, I just deal with any imperfections. So let's go ahead and get back to the layout. Let me just trim this little guy up. We need a little more there. So you can see we have what could be cardstock or pattern paper. Now there's a couple different ways to translate this. So you could imagine that that was the background and then they have a piece of paper over the top. But what I'm going to do is make this the background cardstock and then have pattern paper on the top and bottom because I don't want anything overly busy behind my photos. So let's start with white and just kind of go from there. So let's bring our photos in here and then we can start looking at the different pattern papers. So we could do the same pattern on the top and bottom, or we could switch it up. These I'm going to save for another project and use those as a background more than likely. So we'll set those aside. You can see I've already, used part of this paper pack. So, and some of these, actually that one is from the regular designer series paper. The scrapbook collection didn't have or doesn't have gold foiling, and the designer series paper pack, if you get that instead of the scrapbook workshop, it does have gold foiling. So that's how I know that one was from the other pack, and I just got them mixed up. So I love the poinsettias, and if you look at this one here, this is Secret Sea, which is this beautiful kind of just bluish color, and it looks great with blue jeans. So I really like that, and there's hints of it here in the poinsettia paper. So I like something like that too. We could just use that as a little border divider, bring that in for our bottom piece, and then possibly the top. You know what? Let's work smarter, not harder here. Magnets. Yeah, buddy. I can already tell that's going to be handy. So normally I would bring like my acrylic blocks in and put them. I just got received this glass mat and I've been using or did a review earlier in the week on this. So this is my first time really truly creating a layout on it. So that's kind of handy. While the papers are big and they want to kind of fall off the edge here. So you know what is my thought about this is we have that title and embellishment cluster down here, and this is a busier pattern paper. So my title, depending on what I use, I need to be mindful that it's going to show up on this. So again, when you're choosing your pattern paper, you do need to consider. So we have our title and our journaling, and then, we do have some embellishments here, but they're kind of more overlapping this area, not so much the pattern paper because the pattern paper is smaller. So just something to consider while you're planning. Now, these are the titles I have left to work with. There was one other, but I used it on the other layout. So I kind of like Christmas Joy, but I think I want something a little bit broader. So maybe this one here, the most wonderful time of the year. And that really fits that footprint nicely. So that's an idea. I like that. And then, if we're using poinsettias and stuff to kind of support these, you can see those aren't going to show up. So what if we switched papers here and put this one on the top, and what's on the other side? Oh, I don't know if I want to use that one. There's a stripe paper. Let me grab the striped. Here's the stripe paper. The other side is this beautiful red poinsettia. But what if we kind of reverse that concept, because we're going to have a lot more embellishing and a lot more action going on and our journaling, and we want that to show up on the bottom here. So there we go. And you know what? I actually really like that because it's bringing that red down. And then if we use the pattern paper up at the top, that adds the red to that section. So we have the greens in this pattern paper, and we have the Secret Sea in the pine sprigs. And now we have all three of those colors here at the bottom: green, Secret Sea, and the red. And again, I think that's going to give it just be easier to embellish. So you can see that that does show up really nicely if I do in fact use these guys down here. Okay, we have our heading. I'm going to go ahead and cut these down, and we'll just jump right in. I decided to trim my pieces. They're all 12 inches wide, but this one is 3 inches tall. My top piece is 2 inches, and then the Secret Sea piece is 1/2 inch. And again, all 12 inches to span the page. And I did realize I'm trying not to mix these up because I realize a lot of you don't have both the paperback and the scrapbooking workshop. Maybe you do, but this paper here that I used for this strip, the Secret Sea with the diagonal stripe, is actually from the DSP, which they call the Designer Series paper. So if you are working with the scrapbooking workshop, you have this pattern here. It's got this one on plaid on the other side. So it would give you a similar look and bring in that Secret Sea. But I just wanted to point that out in case you have the workshop and you're like, where is that paper? I don't have it. I was, again, trying to keep them separate. But with all of the projects that have been going on, things get kind of mixed up. So I decided to just go ahead and run this all the way across. Again, we're starting with, the left page here. And then we're going to just kind of configure it. So that's one of the easiest things to do when you're creating a companion page is just, mirror image. Even though the pattern paper is a mirror image and just kind of runs all the way across, my photos will be different. So let's bring those back in. Now I have these printed with the white border, so obviously that's kind of lost on the background there. So what I'm thinking is bringing in some of that pool party color. Can you see that in the background of this particular paper? It's really subtle, but I thought that might be fun to bring in. You can see that color better reflected in the sticker sheet here. So that is like the pool party, and then you can see it in the leaves there. So I think it'll be fun. You could either like tone that color down, or you can, bring it out and kind of highlight it. So let's see, I cut a piece here. This is the two-tone, so I am using the lighter side, and rather than matting them separately, I thought I would just put them on the same cardstock piece there. So I think that looks pretty good. We'll bring this back in and we'll center this. I'm liking it. So let me show you my photos for this side. I have 3 photos for the right-hand side, and they're couple photos, just a continuation of the photo shoot here. So there's Hayden and Des, and I think that's such a great picture of both of them. And then I've got a photo of my husband and I, and then poor Clayton, he's like, "I'm not posing by myself." I don't blame him. So we have another family photo shoot here. This one's different, a little more zoomed in, just our upper bodies. And I'm actually talking, you can kind of see, but I was probably saying something to make them laugh so that I would get good smiles. That's my tactic, and it's usually something silly, possibly just mildly inappropriate, and they giggle like little kids, and it's perfect. So I get genuine smiles that way. So this is what I'm thinking for my photos. Now, if you only had 4 photos, you could absolutely just continue on like this. Or what if you had, so you can see I had one landscape photo, but if I had 3 maybe, all portrait style, you could make them 3 by 4s and do 3 of them going across. That'd be another thing you could do. Or you could do 2 photos like this and just like some squares in the middle if you want to keep that line going. Lots of different ways you can make a companion page work for your photo orientation. So I think, like I said, I'm going to go like this. And then I did cut a pool party mat for this photo over here just to bring that color over. And then I want to mat these two on, I don't think I want to do red. What about, I'm probably not going to use pattern paper because you won't see much of it, but let's just see what Secret Sea looks like. I could do pattern paper. It's actually kind of cute. I'm just going to do cardstock, but I do like the Secret Sea. So let me go grab some cardstock. So I cut one strip to mat these together. And I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I rarely print true 4x6s. I only do that if I am using 4x6 flip flaps. And here's another reason why. So I mentioned being able to cut a 12 by 12, paper directly in half, and then your picture would fit. You'd have some pattern paper on the top and bottom. But this is another reason when you're stacking them like this, if they were 4x6, it would go top to bottom and they'd be touching. And I like to have a little bit of the paper around the, borders there. So by making them just a bit smaller, they're still 4 inches wide, but they're only like 5.3 tall. That gives me that they just fit a little better on the layout. I feel like we need a little of this color up here, so I cut 2 skinny strips. These are about 1/4 of an inch, and we'll kind of tuck them under here. You could also add Secret Sea ink to the edge of that pattern paper, but I wanted just a bit more pop. So let me scoot this under here, and more than this, but less than inking. So that was kind of the perfect little balance. Then we'll just mirror that on the left-hand side. And then for my photo, just this one over here with the white against the pool party, I'm adding Secret Sea ink to the edge of both the photo, and I'll do the photo mat as well. So I just didn't feel like there was enough contrast between this white border and that lighter color of the pool party. I'm not going to bother doing it on the 2 photos in the middle that are running vertical because it's not really going to show up. So we'll do this mat as well. I will do these set of photos on the left-hand side off camera, but you can see that nice little border detail. And let's go ahead and adhere these down with our tape runner. If you are watching this video on Friday, November 21st, the glass mat I'm working on, this is a brand new glass mat. The sizes, it's specifically designed for scrapbooking. And I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I shared a review video. So you can check that out if you want to see it in closer detail. But today, the 21st, they are having their Black Friday sale. It runs all the way through December 1st. And I have the details listed below because for different time frames during the Black Friday sale, you can get free little accessories with your purchase. And I also have a 20% discount code, Crafty Concepts. So if this is on your Christmas wish list, then definitely check out the information in the description box below. I always prefer using liquid glue for these skinny strips. One, because the tape runner itself is wider than the paper, but it's just easier to get them perfectly straight when you have that little bit of wiggle room with the liquid glue. So I think that looks good. That needs to be a bit higher. We'll bring our photos back in there and our title. I am ready to start embellishing. And if you look at the sketch, they've suggested an embellishment placement here and in the opposite upper corner. And this actually works really well for my double page layout because if we follow that and start up here, and then have a little cluster here like the sketch suggests, then I naturally kind of want to go back up here. So what that tells me is maybe bump this down to give me a little more space for embellishing, and then for my journaling, they have suggested it here because it's a single page under the title. But what I'm thinking is down in this section. And since it's over pattern paper, I think you could do white word strips would be cute, but vellum, depending on how much of a story. If you just want to record a few little details, the word strips work great. Or vellum if it's a big story, and I could attach that under this photo. So I think that's going to work out really well. So none of these are adhered down to my base because with all of this nice white space, I am going to do some stamping on the background. And let's face it, if I mess it up, I could easily just put in a new strip of white cardstock there. But if these are all adhered down, that could make it complicated. So this gives me the freedom to move them out of the way for stamping and then easily switch it out if I have a whoopsie. So lots of things to embellish here. We've got stickers, a lot of these are cut out from that sticker sheet. And then we have a bunch of punch outs here. And then I still have more punch outs. There's some bits and bobs in here. And then some border strips. I should just take a second to punch all of these out. There's a journaling block there. I could actually even put that coming out from under the photo. So I've got lots of options here. And then for my stamp sets, I have Christmas greenery, which actually coordinates with this collection. So you can see this floral cluster looks very similar to the pattern paper. And then there's also some sprig dies in here. And then these cut out the stamped image, but they also cut out the images in the pattern paper. And then some holly leaves. That's a great one. And then I just have these two Christmas. And I was thinking, this one's great for just adding little bits. There's a border stamp. This little postage stamp is super cute. You've got title options. And I just like the little December documented. So I pulled this one out to possibly incorporate. And then I mentioned stamping on the background. So if you've been watching my channel for a while, I like to use text stamps. And most of those text stamps are just like a textural element. You can't actually read the text coming out from under the photo just to create a little background interest. But I was thinking maybe some sentiments might be kind of cool in a very light color. So they're not like drawing too much attention. But that's why I grabbed this one. And then one more. I have a bunch of these ornaments left over from our 31 Days of Christmas cards. I used these on a whole set of cards, so I had some extra. This one I've embossed. These are just the die cut ornament in Secret C, so that's without all of the detail. Those are from the Ornamental Christmas stamp, so beautiful titles on here, and then some great trees. This tree here too, you could use that year round. But in here, we have this. I actually bought this mainly for the dies. This ornament die is just so cool and classic, and there's an ornament topper. You have a nice circle in there. These cut out the trees, the two different tree shapes. And then this star is beautiful. So I really like these, but that is where the ornament came from here in this particular set. So I cut the little topper in gold, and then this embossing folder is discontinued, but really anything just to give it some texture. So what I'm going to do is emboss these two. And I'm thinking we're going to have 3 clusters. So I think 3 of these will look really nice. So I'll just run this through my embossing folder here just to give them some beautiful texture there. I cut the ornament toppers from gold foil paper, and there's 2 dies, so you can actually cut 2 with one pass, which helps speed up the process. We'll just attach these to the top of the ornament, and then we will start our embellishment cluster base with this shape because these are the largest. So one up here, and then the other one will take maybe to the outside edge here. Let's bring in our punch out shapes and our stickers here. So this pink poinsettia is bigger. So let's go ahead and put this on the bottom. This cluster will probably end up being larger than the other one in the upper left corner because there's more room and it just, is visually anchoring. So you can see I fussy cut. This is a sticker. That's what the white border looks like before trimming. I don't like a lot of that white, so I just trimmed around it. So now it's just a matter of adding bits and pieces to kind of recreate the look in each corner. And I only have one of these, but I think I'll die cut more sprigs, but we'll use that one up there. And I want this centered, so I'm lining it up with the 6-inch mark. And then, of course, I want this centered, so that looks good. And let's what else can we use? Another poinsettia maybe up here. And then I love adding word that's way too big, but I do love adding little wordy bits. So I think this one's kind of nice. And then I have Secrecy, Old Olive, and Pool Party, all coordinating colors. So I'm thinking let's add this right here. This stamp set says, May the spirit of the season bring you hope, happiness, and love. It's kind of intended for a card sentiment, but I love using sentiments on my scrapbook layout as well. I am just going to test it out. I'm stamping it on some cardstock just to see how that's going to look before I commit. And again, I want it to be subtle. I don't want it to be drawing too much attention. And I think that looks good. So let's just get everything in place and I'm going to go for it. Typically, I would use inexpensive printer paper to create my sample stamping, but I just happen to have that there. So I think this is going to make a really nice kind of base layer for our cluster. I also have this splatter stamp. I've got lots of splatter stamps, but this one's handy from Swirled Designs. And I am using Secret Sea, but this is a dark color. So to lighten this up, we'll do second generation stamping. Some of you may have heard this referred to as stamping off. And what you do is you ink it up in the ink pad. Remove the cat hair from your layout, but then you stamp once on the scratch paper and then go directly to your project. So it's a lighter version of the color. And again, we just want some background interest. Let's put some up top here. Ink it up, stamp off, and second generation ink, go right to your project. I like to call this controlled splatter, and it's a fun way to get some background texture without getting ink everywhere. So let's add a little bit more, stamp off, and then maybe some up here. And again, this is why I dry fit everything so that I can move those out of the way and add the stamping to the base layer. And I think we need a little bit more coming out the side here. So that's looking good. Liking that. And chances are you probably have a lot of splatter scatter stamps. So check your stamp sets, and can be often overlooked little images, but they are invaluable, and I use them over and over again. So this is the embossing buddy. It's filled with like a powder that is used in embossing, but it's great for removing the stickiness from the back of your stickers. And I want to add some foam tape to pop this up, so I want it to be more like a die cut and not a sticker. I'm adding some dimensionals here, and then did you know, I've seen people do this, you can use your take your pick tool, so this little guy, you can flip it over and there's a pointy end, and I see them kind of, pick these off, and because they can be kind of tricky unless you have thin fingernails, but clearly there is an art to this. I'm struggling a little bit, but practice makes progress, right? I think it'll work once I get the hang of it. Some of them are sticking to the back of the sticker. So again, I want this centered. So the point I'm lining up right in the center of my photos at the 6-inch mark. And then we can bring our bits and pieces back in, and this is starting to take shape. I'm really glad I went with a poinsettia paper for the top strip because these flowers, my embellishment cluster, brings that design concept down. I think I need to go higher with my scatter splatter stamp because I ended up bumping up my ornament there. Now, from the Keeping Traditions stamp set, there's this little postage stamp here, and you can put the date in there, but I'm just wanting the word December. So we're going to use Old Olive and stamp this on some white cardstock. And I could stamp it right on the background, but I'm going to cut this out. And you can easily like take your scissors and do the little scallops, but since I'm putting it over a white background, I don't think that my efforts would be really appreciated, so I'm just cutting it along flush and making a rectangle, and I want a little pop of green in the upper cluster here, so we'll just slide that in. I think that looks pretty cute. I have a few more punch out flowers plus this tab. There's even a green one. These are all from the scrapbooking workshop. And this is, these tabs are great for adding the date or little wordy bits. They're just great layering pieces. I have some tab punches and I use them all the time because they just kind of work with any theme, right? Just an added extra little bit to layer into your embellishment clusters. You'll notice I'm working with smaller elements. So I started with the ornament, which was the largest, and then I'm working my way down to the fine details here. I did die cut some sprigs. These are from the Christmas greenery. There's this large pine sprig, and you can see I already put some in and I tore it. So I just wanted the tip of this because I want just a tiny bit. And then I cut a bunch of these berry sprigs from the branching out set. I have gotten so much use from these berries. And again, just a little decorative element. They're really festive, and I love the pop of red, and it's just another little sprig we can tuck into our clusters here. You'll notice I put some secret sea pine sprigs in the bottom cluster by the title. There's a couple green ones in this cluster here at the top, and I'm loving how this is coming together. I mentioned it at the beginning of this video, but this is a collaboration with several of my crafty team members, and we have some new talent in the mix. I'll leave the description, or in the description, I'll have the playlist, plus I'll link it at the end, but you can find their channels and what they have done with this sketch. It's always fun to see different takes on one sketch. I think it really helps us get the most out of those scrapbook designs. I have a bit of white cardstock and pool party ink. I'm using a stamp from Keeping Traditions right here called, or it says December Documented. This is such a useful little wordy bit. You can put it on all your December projects. It's also great for December Daily as well. But back to the collaboration. Uh, Angie is brand new to YouTube. She just uploaded her first video, and I'm so proud of her because I know I make it look easy, but sharing videos is not easy. So show her some love and support. And then we have some other team members that have been on YouTube for a while, but they're new to the collaboration. So you never know. You might fall in love with their crafty style and really resonate with what they teach. So I've got some red and white baker's twine. I'm thinking of hanging the ornaments. It doesn't really show up on the pattern paper, but it certainly shows up here. I actually really like that. So I tied some bows and used glue dots to adhere those down. And then I have this journaling block. I was going to use vellum, but then I spotted this. It's a punch out from the scrapbooking workshop, and I think this might be just enough. Now, these are the patterned tag dies, and you can cut a base shape and then an overlay. This one has pine sprigs, and you can actually pop out the negatives and use those. But I don't necessarily like the green over the red like that. I'd probably put it over white, but you can see how fun those little overlay tags are. But I want something down here with this journaling block. It just felt unfinished. So I was thinking of layering a couple tags for a pop of red. Maybe the green one. Maybe less is more. I don't want this to be a great big embellishment cluster, just a little something so the journaling block doesn't feel so lonely down here. I'm going to try out a few pieces here just to see what jumps out at me. I don't have a whole lot to say about this layout. They're kind of self-explanatory. I'll point out which one made the family Christmas card. But right before we took these photos, I was having the boys stand in front of the tree so I could set up the tripod and, get the focus, make sure the angle was good and all that. So they were just standing there to help me position everything. And they were sword fighting with the candy canes. They were being so ridiculous. So I have a series of photos capturing their shenanigans that just deserved its a whole layout on its own. So that'll probably have more to say. So I'm using the bow and this little tag topper. Isn't that pretty? I love this bow, but it doesn't really show up. I need to do a different color. What about, oh, I almost like that better. What about right here? Oh, it shows up more, but I don't want to waste the twine. I'll just keep the twine. Let's run some of the same twine. I'll save that bow for another project. And in fact, my friend Angie that I was seeing her first video, she used that bow and layered it up a bunch to make a present topper in her video, and it was really cute. I've added my journaling off camera, and then I added a little bit of sparkle sequins. So let's bring our sketch back in, and you can see how I really stuck true to the sketch design and then just created a companion page. So I'll hold this up so you can see all that detail. I love the way the ornaments look hung from the top of the page like that. And the stamping over on the left turned out really great. So this is cute little mini cluster down here, and I love all of that working together over the photo. I will bring in the first layout I created with Keeping Tradition Scrapbook Workshop, and this is a video here on my channel, so I'll leave that in the description box below. It's this one right here in the workshop, but you can see I definitely added a bit and made it my own. For more inspiration on how to interpret this sketch, you want to watch these videos right here on the right. Also new to the team is Gail. Her channel is called Scrappin' the Stash with Gail. You definitely want to check it out. And thank you so much for hanging out with me today. You can find these supplies in the description box below.